I mean, there was a time that I did something and my mum did make me see a counsellor, and now I look back and I think that counsellor should have got it.
I was in denial before because there's always hope.
And they said, we're rolling this out in the places that have the highest rates of depression, Doncaster and London.
I'm constantly itchy.
In spite of all the cruises you've booked, you're only in your early 40s.
Like sometimes it's like the lights are on, but there's no one home. No one home. I can tell it's been a day. You've got a beer, you've got two cans of Coke there. I'm hardcore. I've got a cup of tea and some mini eggs.
Ah, look at that. See, a beer through a straw is actually a revelation because it doesn't get flat. It doesn't go flat. You know, as you tip it up, every time you tip it up, it goes a little bit flat. If you drink it through a straw, it stays fizzy for longer.
Wouldn't you technically, I mean, is that alcohol free or alcohol?
No, it is actually alcohol.
Wouldn't you get like drunk quicker for a straw though?
I don't know if that's nonsense, to be honest. I think it might be nonsense. Also, I don't remember it always exploding out of the top of the straw every time I used a straw with a beer. It's been a minute. I don't drink that much anymore, Emma. Things have changed.
I know.
Things have changed. I've had this Bud Light in the fridge for weeks.
Things have changed. We're getting older. And that is a beautiful segue to begin the podcast. That's not a podcast. Should we just say hello and welcome to It's Not a Podcast?
Welcome to our podcast. It's not a podcast.
That's not a podcast.
Don't call it a podcast.
Don't call it a podcast, no. Firstly, how are you?
All right. Yeah. I finished work a couple of hours ago. I've had a video filmed. I've edited it while I was waiting for you. I'm on fire. I'm on fire.
You on fire? This girl is on fire.
On fire. I'm hoping I've leveled out our sound a bit better because one of the reasons I wanted to wait until we had the first episode online to do the second one, I just wanted to see what people think, but also like, how is it? And apparently I was a little bit quiet, which no one has ever said ever in the history of the world.
Normally it's me.
I know. Crazy. So I boosted it a little bit, so hopefully we're a little bit more on a level this time.
Are you on your mic still? Because I was wondering whether, like, I haven't charged them, but would these work? Would these work?
Wait, I've got
mine's not
them somewhere knocking around here.
Maybe for next time. For next time, I'll get it charged up.
When we get to do it together at the same time, that would be so funny. Just to do a tiny microphone podcast.
Yeah, which hopefully will be in maybe a couple of weeks. I've not discussed this with Cardi yet, but I was just discussing it with Chris downstairs, and he was like, "Oh, we'll put some dates together and blah blah blah." I'm like, "Yeah." So,
well, we talked about like when we've got the space, and did I tell you I'm going to see Katie Musgraves?
No, when you going?
I'm going with Ella in the beginning of May.
Oh, amazing!
So excited. She really wanted to go. I've been looking for ages. We'll get onto the topic, guys. We'll get to the topic. This is all part of it. This is just evidence of what we're going to talk about. So I've been talking for ages. I wanted to go and see her live again. She was just like, I think the last time she did something, it was I want to say Somerset House. She was like at a Somerset House festival, which is really expensive because you've got to go to see all of the people, obviously.
Oh, country to country?
No, it wasn't that. It was a weird one. It was like an outdoor at Somerset House. I don't know if it was outdoor because it was like still kind of pandemic-y. I don't know. But that was the last time she was in the UK, and I'd been stalking for ages, and I was just like, ugh, whatever. And when she launched a new album, I don't know why I didn't think to check. I think I'd just given up. And by the time I did check, they'd all sold out. So we've paid probably double face value for the tickets, and they're like stand-in. But it's a small venue. It's fine. It's fine.
Isn't it nice now that you can go to concerts like with Ella? It's like she's become like your little
BFF.
BFF, yeah.
She'd be mortified, I'm sure. Well, the best part as well, I was like, I said last time I was in Manchester, because it's in Manchester. I went to this pub with Charlotte, and it was amazing. I loved it. I could just spend the entire day in there. It was kind of felt like an Instagrammy kind of bar because it was huge, but all the areas of this bar were different. They had a different aesthetic in each corner. So if you went there wanting to create some content, take some videos, whatever, it would be
Mm.
a great place to do that because there's just so many different backdrops. But the thing that was really cool, it was like a German bar, I want to say. They sold hot pretzels. That was the food
Oh,
that they did. Different toppings.
oh,
Mm,
oh. Now I want a pretzel, but
I
now I want a
know.
Mickey pretzel with the cheese because I had the Mickey pretzel with the cheese in California, and that was honestly one
The
of the
most
best.
delicious.
One of the
I
best Disney snacks.
do like a pretzel. But yeah, and then I said that to her and she was like, "Oh, I can drink now." I was like, "I do. It's exciting." So yeah,
God,
that's what we're gonna do. But
hang on
I
a
don't know.
second. Just a sec. I apologise if you can hear background noise. Mum's on the phone. I don't know if anybody else's mum or dad or parent, whenever they're on the phone, they're so loud. So loud.
Do you know
I'm
what?
like,
I can't hear it, but when I listened back to the previous one, when you were like doing the fizz of the whatever, I think it must have really good um
like muffling.
technology for like trying to block out external noises because I couldn't hear when I was like tapping on something, I could
Yeah,
not hear that. When you were doing the thing right next to your phone, could not hear that. So clearly there's something by design.
something's working.
Yeah. So it was pretty good. It's pretty good. Anyway,
Hmm.
so what we were gonna also while I've got it here, I have a new flyer that I've made.
Oh, a flyer? You've
A
got
flyer.
leaflets.
Me and Karen are gonna do some leafleting in our areas.
Oh,
Doesn't that look so very
that's
profesh?
cool.
And I'm
Oh my
quite
God,
excited
you
about
need to
that.
get a satchel. You need to get a satchel for you. Like a smoke and matches satchel. That would be cool.
I used to deliver papers as a kid. Um,
Okay.
or had the full whatever. So now, well, didn't you live like above a paper shop or a newsagent?
Yeah, and
So
I
that
always,
makes
if
sense.
they didn't turn up, I used to have to do their round.
Bastards.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, on the flip side of that, my mom, who say we will. I think this is a great thing. If I didn't want to do it, which, I was 13 when I started this paper round. And on my 14th birthday, my work permit arrived, and I thought I was a little bit suspicious. Like perhaps I was not legally working before 14. Um, but I remember the work permit arriving. But yeah, when I didn't want to do it, which, kids gonna be kids, she did it and kept the money for a takeaway. And
Oh,
I think that's absolutely acceptable.
oh, Jane.
I know. She kept my job going for me. But she was like, "Well, I'm keeping the money."
Exactly. So she's keeping the money, so she's getting a takeaway. But did you benefit from the takeaway?
I don't know. Probably not.
So,
I would have had,
mm,
fish fingers and chips. You
those
know
are
how
the
it
days.
is.
I still have fish fingers, mash, beans, and a cherryade. That's so
Ooh.
retro. Or a limeade.
Vimto.
Or
Vimto.
dandelion and burdock.
If we're getting into
Mm,
the like cherryade of it all, it's got to be a Vimto. So what we were going to talk about today was like 20 minutes later, perimenopause.
yes. Where do we even begin? I mean, I've
Well,
got all the
first of all,
symptoms.
you got all the. The thing is, the most frustrating thing, and especially because you've been like diagnosed with perimenopause, right? To a degree, as much as you could
Yeah, they
be
can't. Yeah, as much as you
diagnosed.
can
Yeah.
be.
It must be extra frustrating because everyone constantly tells me everything that is wrong with me that used to be all these like a laundry list of things. Someone's literally just messaged me and said they think I've got Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I'm like, okay, well, I'll deal
What
with
was
that
that?
later.
They've got what? What?
Ehlers-Danlos. I've heard of this before because other people have said it. There are many, many things that people have been like, I know what's wrong with you. And I'm like, I'm glad somebody knows.
I've never heard of
Um,
that one.
well, you'll hear more about it when I'm diagnosed. But there are so many things that people go, oh, it's perimenopause. That when you are going through perimenopause, it must be so frustrating.
Do you know what? I mean, I'm glad perimenopause, ADHD, anxiety, they're all very much hot topic in mainstream media now, which
Hmm.
is great because it never used to be. Um, and in many ways, it's helpful because you've got more resources to learn about things that you never would have had before. But it's also that's all you see.
Yeah.
as well. So yeah, it is frustrating. So to a degree, I kind of block out a lot of it, but it's also been very helpful. Um, because I just thought I was going crackers. And it's not until you read stuff you're like, yeah, I've got that. Yeah, I've got that. Yeah, I've got that. Like one of the most like weirdest symptoms is itchy skin. I'm constantly itchy. And I'm like, why am I so itchy? And then you go, oh, it's the perimenopause. You've got something to attribute it to. Like where before you're like, well, I haven't changed my washing powder. I
Yeah.
haven't changed my moisturizer. What's wrong with me? Why am I literally here? I can scratch here and scratch and scratch and scratch.
Till it
And
hurts.
it's never enough. And I'm like, but it's hormones. It's hormone. So many things are attributed to hormones. My mood, I I can switch mood very quickly. One day I can be completely fine, the next day I'm not. I'm absolutely not, and I don't know why. I don't have anything to attribute it to, um, other than hormones, because nothing's wrong. I feel very vacant. Like sometimes it's like the lights are on, but there's no one home. No one home. I've got my attention span is zero. I was saying to you in the last podcast that it took me ages to pack my suitcase because I had no inclination, no motivation. I just didn't want to do it. And I find that I'm not wanting to do a lot of stuff because I just can't be bothered. And I
Yeah.
never used to be like that. I always used to be like, come on, right, yeah, what's next? What are we doing now? And I just feel like I'm not interested in things anymore. And you kind of feel like you lose yourself a little bit. Well, you lose yourself a lot because you're wondering why things are changing so much. Your body, your mind's changing, your body's changing. There's so many things. I've got like fatigue. My bones are aching all the time. They shouldn't be aching. I'm only in my early 40s, but you think,
In
why?
spite of all the cruises you've booked, you're only in your early 40s.
And I know, listen, I know people are going to go, well, lose some weight. I was, I've been
Yeah.
big all my life, and I've never
You're
felt
still
like I
gonna
feel
feel
now.
changes.
I
Yeah.
still feel a shift. I still feel a change. I try to get healthier. She says eating mini eggs, but
That
but
is the smallest bag of mini eggs I've ever seen in my life. There's probably more
mini,
calories in this beer than there is in that
mini eggs.
mini egg bag.
um, but yeah, I try to make healthier choices. I've put weight on. I mean, I put weight on in the pandemic. Of course I did, but I feel like I'm not eating any different now than what I did before, if you know what I mean. And I'm
That
exercising more.
isn't the thing.
No, I walk all the time.
Hmm.
Um I I've got the bike now, I've got the Peloton. So I do the Peloton classes, and I'm trying to keep myself fit. I'm not trying to lose weight or to get thin or whatever, but it's just I'm still bloody tired all the time and
So
aching.
I wonder how much, because I know that for a lot of women, I mean, generally, like you were saying about like anxiety, ADHD, perimenopause, it's like front of mind because it's everywhere at the moment. And for a lot of people, they're like, well, blah, blah, blah. And I get it. But for a lot of women, we're kind of invisible when it goes with doctors. When you're needing help, it's like, well, it's probably one of these things. And
Mm,
first thing they'll ask you, when was your last period? Because they think
mm,
everything's got something to do with your period. And then you're probably hormonal. You're hysterical. You're
mm,
hormonal. You're like, there's something to do with that. Then
mm,
on top of that, you will have, well, it's a weight factor.
mhm.
Before they actually want to get to what the real problem is, they have to tick off, well, is it these things that we don't even have to deal with because it's really her fault?
Have you got something
It's,
wrong with your eye? Oh, she wait.
oh, oh, you
Oh,
need to lose some weight.
yeah.
And now on top of that, anything that you go to the doctors with now, they'll be like, well, that is something to do with
That's
perimenopause. So it must be even more frustrating to have gone through, especially with like the fertility stuff, to have gone through the like, when was your last period? And then, well, have you tried losing weight? And well, it is, you're in that age now.
well, it's like I said before, I feel like um in many ways perimenopause is like you have to go through a grief. For me because I haven't had children.
Yeah.
So in many ways, for me, perimenopause is like the shop is slowly shutting down. I was in denial before because there's always hope, isn't there?
Yeah.
There always might be
There's
a miracle.
always hope
Always
because
hope,
there's
you know?
always stories.
Yeah, exactly. And so when the perimenopause to me started happening, bearing in mind, I feel like this started happening during the pandemic. And so I think there's a lot of blurred lines with me thinking, well, is it just because we're all in our houses and we're all going stir crazy?
Mm,
But I feel this definitely started during that because I had like things like the fog, the insomnia, all that kind of stuff. So I think it was sort of creeping in. Um, and so yeah, but now I know that I'm definitely in the throes of it. I've had blood tests and my estrogen is low, and they can pinpoint that it is that, especially like with the periods. Like I hadn't had my periods are so erratic now. When they used to be 30 days, here I am. And now it's like 24 days, 44 days, 50 days. I mean, I was on 80 days. So they're really erratic. Um, and that also messes with your brain because then you also think, am I pregnant?
oh no.
Right? Because you're so
Of course.
I'm so used to it. And then you're like, well, am I? I don't know. Then you do a test, then you check and you're not, and you're like, right, okay. So
And
it's
not
like,
only are you not, but it's become even less likely.
yeah. And so that's why I say about the grieving side of things
Mm,
for me. Like, I suppose I guess I'm reacting to it differently to somebody else going through pain. I guess everybody's journey would be different. But yeah, like I say, it's like the shop is slowly shutting down, and I have to come to terms with the fact that the shutters are going to be shut soon and there
yeah.
won't be any hope, which I have come to terms with. But
Yeah. You're
there's
never going to
still
be
that.
okay with it.
No, exactly,
And I
because
don't think that's reasonable to expect you to just be like, just be okay with it. You're never going to be okay with it, but it's harder right now.
it's harder, but um you have to make peace with the fact that your life is not how you wanted it to be. It's not how I'd mapped it out. I wanted to be the classic get married, have 2.4 children, blah 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 blah. That was my plan. And now it's not my plan. And now I just go on cruises. but
Really,
but
you should be going on like, what is it called? Sandals, adults only vacation.
oh yeah, yeah. Be like, oh
What,
um
what is this life? Oh
I
man.
see lots of these reels now of women like going, "Oh, this is me getting up on a Saturday morning. Oh, just doing what I want because I don't have kids." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I get you, I get you." But
Yeah.
in an alternate universe, my life should have
Yeah.
been how I would have envisioned it, but it's not, and I have to make peace that the shop shutters are shutting down completely. It's having a closing down sale at the moment, and you
Yeah.
know, it will diminish and it will be gone. Um, but it's just the symptoms, like, are just bonkers. Like, I
Yeah.
just it's exhausting as well. It's exhausting.
It must be
Um
like the big change. Like we talked about before, how one of my big pushes to ask to be referred to the ADHD assessment was that as you get older, I watched a fantastic TED talk actually. I'll send it to you because this woman was great. She was talking about the overlap between perimenopause and ADHD. And let's
Mhm.
say there's like a cloud of symptoms and a cloud of symptoms. It was like more than 50% of them overlapped. And so then when you get into your late 30s, a lot of women were going to the doctors like there are these various problems. And that is when some people were discovering that they actually had ADHD. Because
Mm.
all of these symptoms, like when I tell someone, well, these are the things, like when you list some of the itchy skin, when I was a kid, like my skin, Lee will despair because he has in the past scratched my skin to the point of like he's taken skin off, and I'm like, it's not, you cannot scratch my skin enough.
I
That's
Yeah.
been my whole life, my
Mm.
whole life. So there are so many symptoms that people will say, well, that's menopause. And I'm like, but it wasn't menopause when I was 10, and it's
Right.
been that way since then.
Mm.
And all these things that you just think, because they're just little idiosyncrasies. If you were just
Mhm.
really itchy, you'd be like, oh, I must have just dry skin.
Mm.
Little individual things. And then one day someone says, here's a list of things. And you go, oh my God,
Yeah.
that is. in this case, perimenopause. And for me, I was like, that's insane. And so many people for so many years told me I had ADHD and I just thought they were being rude. Um, that one day when someone explained the hyper focus of it all, and I was like, oh my God, that's when I started reading up about it and really identified. So now I feel there's a bit of a clock on it with the NHS that if
Mm.
I'm not diagnosed soon, if, maybe I'll go and they'll be like, you've not got ADHD at all. And then, okay, let's move on with my life. But if I'm not actually diagnosed soon, I feel like it will just be written off as menopause.
Do you think?
Yeah, because there's so much of it. So much of it is just, oh, it's menopause. And so much of what you described is how I feel all the time, just always.
Mm.
And I felt like it was normal. And then, of course, when you get into perimenopause, everything is exaggerated. So all of
Mm.
those symptoms that you just live with anyway are then so
Mm.
much worse. And then
Mm.
that becomes lots of women find it intolerable and can't cope at all
Yeah.
because then it's even worse. But it is really interesting to hear more about menopause because although we're hearing lots about ADHD and I feel like that almost feels like an episode in itself if and when I eventually get diagnosed. I'm really back and forth about whether or not I want to go private because, well, for a
Well,
few reasons.
I mean, it'd be quicker for a start, wouldn't it? But
It would be quicker. If I'm totally honest, one of the reasons that I don't want to go private is because of the YouTube element. I don't want someone to say, well, you went private and so you got the diagnosis, but you're not really.
But that's not necessarily true. You're not going private for them to tell you you have it. You're going private to still see.
Yeah, I
You still
know.
might go private and they test and be like, well, no, it's not.
I
What?
know. It's just I feel like I need the validation from a professional to say you haven't been crazy this entire time. It is this.
Hmm.
And I feel like if I go private, there will be naysayers who make me question whether the validation is totally accurate. Even,
But who's to say? Okay, here I'm just devil's advocate. Who's to say that if you went private, you would get the same doctor?
well, I know, but you know how it is. Sometimes
Mm.
people just like, someone puts something in your head and then you're like, oh.
Mm.
So I think I'll probably do another year, and if I'm still waiting for an appointment, I will seriously consider it
But
because
what is the wait time then on the
it can be
NHS?
like 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so then I'm gonna
Mm.
be in my 40s, and then I'm most
And then it
concerned.
will. I mean, then it definitely will be the.
That's what I'm saying. Then I'm concerned that it
But
will
then
just
what if
be,
what if you go through the perimenopause and you have ADHD?
yeah. This is the thing. This
Like,
is then it becomes for some people
yeah, you would.
particularly difficult. Not to say that it's any less difficult for people that are just in perimenopause anyway, because it's still as huge a change. It's
Yeah, like
just a
if you,
different kind
I
of
mean,
change.
I don't have statistics off the top of my head, but it's just, when you read things and you hear
Mm,
about things and you hear a lot of people are, like really at the end of their tether with it,
mm,
to the point of they want to
yeah.
end.
Well, yeah, this is where it then comes to like the NHS like to prescribe antidepressants. But I think this is the same because things have happened like that. I know for you and for some other people, just
Mhm.
with menopause. You go and you say these are my problems, and they're like, oh, it's anxiety, it's depression. And you're like, well, I don't think that's what it is. And then they look a little bit further and they go, oh, okay, maybe it's perimenopause.
Mhm.
And it's so underdiagnosed. And from both of them, the ADHD and the perimenopause, so many people talking about it, it
Mhm.
can feel like a lot. And it can sometimes feel like, oh, well, you're attributing that to that because you've heard
Mhm.
Davina McCall talking about it. But if she didn't talk about it, then you would just quietly think you were going mad.
Yeah, I mean, props to her with the book. I mean, I've got the book that she wrote. I've watched the documentaries, and it's great that she is highlighting it for people because, like you say, you would think you were going mad, and like I say, like with the symptoms and stuff, like I mean, the hot flushes. I get night flushes. I don't get them in the day. I mean, I guess maybe that's to come. I don't know because I'm not in the full swing of
Something to look
menopause yet.
forward to.
Oh, can't wait. But um, but the night sweats, like I would go to bed fine, pajamas. night cardigan. Well, actually, I don't wear a bed cardigan so much anymore.
Now we
But,
know why.
now we know why. But I would go to bed completely in my pajamas and then wake up. Chris would wake up and go to work, and I'd be completely like starkers because I've had sweats and I'm just profusely sweating in the night. I've only ever had one like hot flush during the day, well, daytime, evening time, and we had friends round, and it's really weird because normally I wouldn't be phased by it. I just thought, well, this is what's happening, blah blah blah. And my friends are very understanding anyway. But we'd been out somewhere and they'd all come back and we were having drinks or whatever, and I just couldn't stop sweating, and I had to go in the garden and like just sit in the garden by myself, and I felt really like I didn't want anybody to fuss. I didn't want anybody to be around me. I felt really embarrassed because I couldn't stop sweating, and I was just like, what's wrong? I know what's wrong with me, but why won't it stop? You
Yeah.
know? I just had to sit out there for like 10 minutes on my own, and then I come back in and like literally I've got the kitchen towel that's drenched in sweat and stuff, and I'm just like, I'm so sorry, but I just couldn't be around people. I just didn't want to be surrounded by, like, normally, you know what I'm like, I'd make a joke of it. I'd be like, oh, here I am sweating away, blah blah blah. But I just was like, I don't know, just embarrassed. It's almost like that, you know, when you do a first aid course and they teach you about patients and how, like, if someone's, how do you think a patient would feel if they were having an attack or whatever, and you're treating them, and you know they tell you to clear the area because that patient would be embarrassed or whatever.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, kind of like if you want to like
No,
attribute
that
it to,
makes sense. Like, you wanna be just everyone get away from you.
yeah,
But
just
isn't
go.
it weird, right, that you like it's like you're talking about it as if this is like some kind of disorder that only you have, because that's how it feels. But this
Mm,
is something that all women
mm,
in the world will
mm,
experience at some point. And because it has been talked about so little, even though it feels like it's talked about a lot now, because it's talked about so little, it makes you feel like you have to be apologetic for a bodily function that is literally going to happen to every single woman. If this happened to every
yeah.
single man, we'd all know about it.
Oh, we
There'd
would,
be
wouldn't we?
like
Yeah.
there'd be something, there'd be a button he could press and everyone would leave him the fuck alone.
They'd have perimenopause bars, wouldn't they?
Yes. Oh,
It's funny how it's got
does your
men in
work,
it.
I know. Does your work have a menopause policy? I think you've got,
Hmm.
maybe it's a smaller company than mine, but we have a menopause policy. I don't actually know what it is. I just remember seeing it on
What,
our
what, I was
SharePoint
going
thing.
to say, what would that
Um,
entail
I would
exactly?
imagine it's to do with like ad hoc time off and like allowing women who are going through the menopause to, take the time that they need to take. But just just the idea that there was a menopause policy, I was like, wow, times they are a
I mean,
changing.
it kind of makes sense because I mean, there
Mm.
have been times when I have been at work and I've, you're just vacant.
Hmm.
I can't, there's no other way to describe it. You could be sat there doing your work and then you just feel like,
Yeah.
you just lose sense of reality, you know? But then I suppose you have to quickly get back into it if you're actually at work. But yeah, there have been instances. So yeah, I can understand if you feel like, I don't know, what would you just, I'm having a menopause day today, or what, like what would like like
Hey, I'm going to be taking advantage of this policy, whatever it might be. I just love the idea that it was
Emma,
even
you've taken
created.
6 months off. Yeah, yeah.
Menopause.
The menopause, it's a bitch.
Real, it's a real, like, strong case of the menopause.
Oh, but I suppose so. I mean, maybe for doctor's appointments as well and all that kind of stuff, if you're going to go and get tested, or if you're on HRT, maybe that's a thing as well, because you'd have to. I mean, there's different types, isn't there, of HRT? I have been offered HRT at the doctor, and I need to actually rebook an appointment with the doctor, but I am going to see a menopause specialist.
Oh.
Yeah, there's actually one that's quite local to me. I didn't realise until I was Googling. But I'm going to see a menopause specialist in the next couple of weeks. Just to talk about everything. Because if there's other ways to deal with it.
Mhm.
So when the doctor itching, when the doctor told me about HRT, and she says, well, we can put you on it. Um, but I feel like you're too young still. But we only like to have you on it for 10 years. And then when I spoke about that actually on my channel, loads of people flooded it and said, well, no, you could be on it for long term if you want to be.
If you
Not
want
just
to be. I only know
yeah.
this because of that thing that Kim Cattrall was in. What was it called? Sensitive Skin. And she, in one of the first episodes, maybe the first episode, she goes to the chemist and they say to her, oh, you're only supposed to be on this for whatever. And she's like, yeah, well, and she goes off on like, well, as soon as she starts taking it, she'll basically get old, is what she's saying. Like her hair will go grey and her skin will lose collagen and firmness. And she's pretty much saying she'd rather have more years of feeling younger
Yeah.
than more years overall.
Yeah.
And she just
Yeah.
like has a go at this person. That's the only reason that I know that you're only supposed to be on it
Mm.
for
So I mean,
so long.
I didn't know any of this, you see, and so it's like conflicting information now. So the GP told me this, and then so many people are saying, "Well, no, you can be on it," and then when you Google it, you're like, "Oh, yeah, you can be on it for
It's
longer."
your choice,
It's
definitely.
yeah, your choice. And so I thought about it, and I thought, well, do I wait or do I go on it? I mean, I didn't take it at the time. I was like, look, I'm going to see if I can just go cold turkey for a little bit, see what happens. And then again, because I discussed it, so we were saying before, it's quite saturated media and stuff, but actually by talking about it, it opens conversations. And so many people said to me, why don't you see if you can find a menopause specialist, hormone specialist, and you can just talk about everything that you're going through, and then they can maybe think about alternative ways that you can deal with it without HRT if you don't
Yeah.
want to take it. So I'm doing that before I commit to the HRT. I was, do you know what? I was dead set. I was like, when I come back from holiday, I thought, I don't want to take it before holiday because what if I react? What if things
Yeah.
like it just doesn't agree with me and I'm on holiday? I'll wait. And then I thought, no, let's go and see the specialist first, talk about stuff. Someone that just knows, someone that's not a general practitioner only knows so much, don't they? They're not
According
equipped.
to my latest GP visit, they know nothing because we were talking about some pain and he was like, well, this isn't really our area of expertise. And I swear to God, I was like, what is your area of
Well,
expertise? Because as far as I'm concerned, it's no area of expertise. They're supposed to know a little bit about everything and be able to point you in the right direction.
yeah, to me, I see a GP as a middleman. I see
Mm.
a GP as like somebody that you go in, say your leg hurts or whatever, and they go, oh, and they look at your
And they
leg,
go,
and
when was your last period?
you need to lose weight. But like they look at your leg and they go, oh, and they're like, and they might know some bits about whatever, but then they send you to the leg specialist. That's what a GP is to
The
me.
legtometrist.
The optometrist, yeah. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, I suppose they need to know enough to be able to talk to you about it, but they don't know in depth. They're not specialists, are they? And there's no specialists at the hospital, is there? Why isn't? Well, not that I know of, anyway. If anybody
Where
knows any,
are the specialists? Where do they live?
but here's the thing: why isn't there a dedicated department to talk about this? Because essentially, it's a gynecological
Ecological.
problem, as well as like also under the mental health umbrella. Where is the department that's qualified to talk about this, especially like specially?
This
I
thing that affects 50% of people.
Yeah. You've got your other areas of expertise, and then you've got your maternity and your whatever and all that stuff.
Hmm.
And there's like, I mean, I don't know, but like when you have a baby, you have a health visitor, don't you?
Well,
Right?
so on this subject, has something just popped up on the screen? Something just
No?
popped up. I'm dying to see if that actually comes up in the recording because something
What
just
was
popped up in
it?
my screen. It was just a thumbs up in a bubble
Oh,
next to you.
wait,
Ah,
yes. Yeah.
what
That
is
does that when I do
that?
when I do voice calls with people. I was on a FaceTime with mum when we were away, and I said something to her and I was like that, and she went, "Oh, that come up as a thumbs up."
What?
Yeah,
Technology. What a
I'm doing it
world.
now. Yeah.
Well, what I was going to say was something that always stuck with me was when I was having Ella. many moons ago, my then mother-in-law was having a hysterectomy. So we were
Yes.
effectively having very similar operations. Well, I didn't know at the time I was going to have a C-section. Um, but it was around the same time that she had her hysterectomy and I had my C-section. She had, I want to say, 2 or 3 weeks of like follow-ups. They were really bothered about her. Like she had physio for like
Mhm.
getting back up and running again. And they were really like, you can't get out of bed for 2 weeks. It was really intensive. This is a
Mhm.
really serious operation that you had. These were all the things. Nothing. I don't think I was given any words of advice. They just sent me home
What with
having,
your C-section?
yeah, I think it's like 7 layers they cut through to get the baby out. And they just kind of were like, enjoy that then. Like it was literally nothing.
Was it kind of
And
like, "Enjoy that, don't lift anything heavy"?
yeah, I don't, they barely even say that because obviously you're going to go home and care for a newborn. So you are going to lift things, you are going to do things. Um, and you have dissolvable it was ages before I saw anyone else. The whole thing was so weird because I remember her care being so far superior to mine.
Oh.
Even though we had such a similar, obviously she had a whole hysterectomy removed, I was gonna say. She had a whole uterus
Mm. Yeah.
removed, but it was basically the same operation other than that. And she got so much better care because in everything to do with pregnancy, up until you have the baby, it's all about you. And then when you have the baby, they don't really care about you anymore. So
Mm.
you don't get a lot of a lot. And when
Oh.
I did have Ella, I had what I realize now was postnatal depression, but at the time, I don't even think I knew what postnatal depression was. And I remember going to the doctor and then they said that they would usually have given me antidepressants, but that they were doing some kind of like, we're trying not to give people antidepressants at that time, which would have been probably 2006, early 2006. And they said, we're rolling this out in the places that have the highest rates of depression. And they were two places. It was Doncaster and London,
God.
which how mad is that anyway?
Yeah.
And so I had talk therapy where once a week someone called me, asked me questions from a tick list, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel about this week? That was all irrelevant to why I'd gone in the first place. So I get where you're coming from, but I actually don't think that the care for new mothers is there either. I just think generally the care for women isn't there.
I meant it from a health visitor perspective. So, you know, where you say you had postnatal depression,
Yeah,
how come that wasn't picked up by the health visitor?
because the health visit is not really there for you.
They're there for the baby. Mm.
It's not
Mm.
really about you ever. That's not just generally the whole vibe. It's not really about you. Once you've had the baby, they're like, and let's talk about the baby. Unless there was
Um,
something really super obvious.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, I remember I had a stitch that was sticking out and it was really bothering me, and they were like, "It'll go away on its own." And eventually I cut it from the outside, um, because I just thought, well, surely if I cut it from the outside, it'll draw in. And it did. But they were just gonna I was so uncomfortable, and they were just gonna leave it.
Mm.
I don't know how long it might never have gone away.
Mm. God.
Yeah, the whole thing is like, I feel like I don't have a tremendous amount of faith in the system at this moment, but I'll be really interested to see what your experience is like with this specialist because you would hope this is their bread and butter. This is what they do day in, day out. They speak to women about
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. So let's see what she says. And then I'll make some decisions and make an appointment with the doctor and see. Well,
But
I was talk-
is she a prescribing nurse or doctor? The person you'll see?
no,
No.
no, she can't prescribe medicine, but she's a specialist.
Okay.
So, um, I mean, I'm just going for a chat, really. I'm just going for an expensive
Hmm.
chat, just to
Mm.
just to see.
It's a
That's
private
fine.
consultation.
Yeah, private
Okay, that makes
consultation.
sense. Because Lee
Yep.
wants me to go to a private consultation about my back, and I'm really against
Mm.
it. And he really wants me to go. So again, even more so. I'm very keen to hear about it now.
Why are you against it again?
I just don't want to. I don't feel like I should have to pay to see a doctor. It's not even
Mm.
that expensive in the grand scheme, but I
But
just
you've been in, yeah, but in this instance, you've been in a lot of pain for a lot of years, right? With everything.
yeah, yeah. It just feels like well, yeah. It just feels like you shouldn't have to get to that point. And also maybe
I
there's an
know.
element of guilt that you can afford to do that and someone else can't.
Mm,
It's a
yeah, but
privilege thing, maybe. But I don't know. It makes me feel kind of like ugh,
icky.
having any kind of like private health thing. It's an English thing, maybe.
Perhaps.
Because in
Perhaps.
America they wouldn't think twice.
Well, no.
It's just the norm.
Isn't it in Ireland as well? You have to pay for your healthcare
Hmm.
in Ireland.
I don't know, but honestly, we were talking about Ireland the other day because I was saying to Ella, when we were on holiday in Spain, I had no idea. This is, I'm going to say 2018, when they had would it be called a referendum? I don't know. I know about abortion, that abortion
Oh,
was illegal in Ireland until like 2018. I could not turn off the news. I couldn't believe that I didn't, and I think it's still very difficult, in spite of the fact that it was overturned. It still needs to be available, and I don't think it really is. I still think it's very
I
difficult.
still don't understand what gives people the audacity to have control over other people's bodies and what they do with them.
Religion is always the cause, always. It
Anyways.
makes me so cross, but and also, I mean, not to get into it, but people always think mistakenly think that I am pro-life because I had a baby when I was 19. I am very much not pro-life. I am pro-choice to the core.
Same,
But it
same.
makes
And
me
people would,
yes,
yeah.
for different reasons they would think we were both pro-life. Um no, I don't believe that life begins at conception. I just don't. And it makes me so cross what's happening in America, but also that it was happening so close to us.
So close to us, yeah.
It
It's
really
happening in
blew
the
my
dark
mind.
ages.
Mm.
Why? Like, why? Well, we know
I
why,
know.
but it's just.
It really, really blew my mind. But, all of it, again, comes down to women being let down by healthcare.
Mm. This has kind of turned into we are a women being let down like chat, hasn't it?
Well, that
But
kind of is it. Like menopause, it would be a different situation if it was men. It just would. And the majority of the people that are on the waiting list for ADHD help right now are women in the late 30s and early 40s because boys until like the 2000s, I want to say like until like 10 years ago, but I don't want to misquote the study. Until not that long ago in the grand scheme, they didn't think women could have ADHD and they thought boys grew out of it.
really, I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
They didn't think so. That's why so many women are like referred to as the lost generation because it just wasn't even considered. If you look back and you're like, well, there was this, and this, it's like, of course, of course. I mean, as and when I actually get a diagnosis, I'll get into some of the hilarious things that happened to me as a teenager, which I've never talked about on YouTube before, but you will know about some of my crazy antics that you're like, why? I mean, there was a time that I did something and my mum did make me see a counsellor, and now I look back and I think that counsellor should have got it. He should have spotted
Mm.
it. And he was like, she's jealous of her brother. I'm like, I can tell you for damn sure I was not jealous of my brother. That wasn't it. But it just feels like they don't care about us, truthfully.
Mm. Well, I don't know. Like you say, you feel it's a bit icky, but if you can go down the private route, why not? You
Yeah,
know,
you're probably right.
if you have the resources, but
When are you going for
just
your specialist appointment?
in a couple of weeks' time.
Okay,
So
okay.
we can follow this up, couldn't we? We could
We
do it.
can follow this up. This is long term because we're going to do this, not a podcast, for a long time. So
Yeah.
we can follow this up in a future Wednesday. And maybe one day I'll be like,
Well,
and
this would be great to get comments actually on not only perimenopause but ADHD and all that kind of stuff, and actually it would be great to have a comparison in terms of like NHS versus private for a lot
yeah,
of things and how people fare with that. That would be good to have open that conversation up.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, you would be amazed at the comments that will come from this discussion because so many stories are different, and like when I was reading all the comments, like I get a lot of them when it comes to talking about this, and it gets to the point where when you get like hundreds of them and you feel like I can't give a detailed response to each one of these comments
yeah.
because it's going to be a long time, but I read all of them, and everybody's story is like, yeah, I was the same, yeah, I was the same, I went through this, I went through that. And I feel like it's so relatable in terms of like for ADHD and perimenopause.
Mm,
And so the conversation will be helpful, I think,
yeah.
for a
I
lot of
think
people.
it's really, really useful to hear other people's experiences with this stuff because so often we are dismissed when we go to the doctor. It's really good to go with a more like fleshed out idea in your mind of this is what I need from you and this is the reason because all these people have given me all this information and now I've done my own research and I'm coming to you armed with this is what I want from you. I always say when you go to the GP, you need to have an end goal. You can't just go and be like, well, you need to go in there knowing what you want. And the last time I went, I didn't. I just
Mm,
I really just needed someone to listen to me and he was not the right guy. But I always think with a GP, it makes it easier for them as well. They've only got so much time. You need to go in
that's-
being like, I need this from you.
mhm.
You kind of need to do your own,
I need a
yeah,
referral. I need this. Yeah,
yeah.
and
I
that's
need
what they're
these
there for.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, Ella's referral came through yesterday because the first person I saw about ADHD, she said, you're too old to be referred on the NHS. I was like, cool. So she then said, what you've got is moderate anxiety and depression, so I'm going to give you these antidepressants, which didn't make me feel great. Then I came back to someone else and I was fully armed. I was like, I want you to refer me through Right to Choose. I've got like forms, I've got a letter written up. All you need to do is sign it and send it. And he was like, no, you can be referred on the NHS. It's fine. And I was so flustered with like him being like, well, she probably just didn't know that I didn't push to be referred the way I wanted to be referred, and I got put on the NHS waiting list, which is like 4 years instead of 6 months.
I do. You know what? Saying that, I think it does also depend what doctor you get.
Mm, which is
Yeah.
infuriating because he was basically
Yeah.
saying she didn't know. She should. I know she can't know about
Yes.
everything, but she should know before you say no, you should
Mm,
say, I'll check that. I'll
mm,
check. Let me just speak to one more person before I
yeah.
give you a definitive no.
We had a doctor at our surgery who was so lovely, so understanding, like literally went through everything, whatever problem, she went through everything with a fine tooth comb to the point where she would ring up patients. We had phone calls at home, both me and mum had phone calls about like following up, just checking. And I'm like, that reminds me of like doctors of
Old
old.
school. Yeah.
Yeah, like my first doctor or whatever. Um, you don't get them like that, I don't think anymore. And she was so oh God, I can't get my words out tonight. Conscientious,
Yeah.
um, with her patients. Anyway, she's moved to Scotland, and so many people are so like
Good.
heartbroken that she's gone. Like,
Yeah.
because you speak to the doctor's receptionist and stuff, and they're like, "Yeah, she was a favourite." I'm like, I'm not surprised because she cared. She truly
Yeah.
cared. And I'm not saying that GPs don't
Do you know
care.
what?
I
She
think
that's the right
they're under,
move. Scotland is
yeah,
the right place for her.
yeah, but like they're under pressure, aren't they? They're so under
Mm.
pressure. They've only got like you say, a limited amount of time. I think it's like 10 minutes an appointment or something. So you can't get everything out. Um,
But you do
so
get a vibe from some people. Some people
yeah,
care
oh
more than others.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Some
But
people it is like I understand that they must have so many people come in and just waste their time. I get that. But I
mm,
really try not to do that. I don't go in very often with
yeah.
like, well, it's really been just pretty much the one thing. I keep going in hoping that they're gonna give me a different answer.
Mm,
Um, but it is sometimes frustrating because the people who do go in a lot get better treatment. And for a long time, I've not gone in thinking, I don't want to waste their time. I don't want to be a bother. And I actually think the more you go, the better treatment you get.
That's their job at the
I
end of the
know, it's so
day.
annoying.
I know.
It's the
But
whole
it
thing
is.
is so annoying. But yeah, I mean, I'll be interested to see what the comments are with this one. And just
Yeah,
another beautiful thing about doing it as a video podcast on YouTube instead of doing it as a regular podcast. Not just the fact that we're potentially going to reach more people doing it this way because people it's going to pop up in the subscription feeds, but also the engagement. I was
yeah,
saying this on a vlog, like that was really just what was missing. I would spend so long editing these complex podcasts and then doing the ones that we did together, the chats, and having to like level out the sound. First of all,
yes.
we've done it this way, which is so much easier to sort out. Second of all, I was just missing that feedback and that engagement with people, and having comments on this that we can both interact with and see what people say. It's so much better. That's you can't do it without that.
No, I agree. This is definitely the best format that
Yeah.
we've done. High five to us. Will that
High
work?
five. High
Will it
five.
high five? Thumbs up to us.
High five. It doesn't do it to me, but I'm on my computer.
Yeah.
Oh, you got a thumbs up. You get a thumbs up, and you get a thumbs up. So yeah,
Everybody can go do a thumbs up. Like
everybody
this.
give us a
Everybody
thumbs
like
up and a
this
high
podcast. This
five.
podcast, this video
High,
cast.
high five if you're going through menopause. Thumbs up
Oh
if you think you're
yeah.
undiagnosed ADHD.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Mm.
this is a good one though for an early episode because we can follow it through. When I was trying to do when I was trying to do podcast-ish last year, I was basically just kind of chatting through feelings and thoughts and kind of pre and post speaking to various doctors, and it just got all a bit like, first of all, self-indulgent, but all podcasts kind of are, but also a bit too much sharing, a bit too
It's
personal.
But also it's nice to talk to somebody because
It
then you can just
really
bounce
is.
off and like say
Yeah.
different like what are you going through? Oh, I'm doing this and I'm like, yeah,
Yeah. And
get
I think
them.
talking something out sometimes helps make a decision. You know, like you said about you were definitely going to do HRT, and then you hear from other people and you're like, well, maybe
Mm,
I'll do things
mm,
differently.
mhm.
It does help. And so it would be great in 6 months' time if we're like, well, all of our problems solved.
Take
2024 is
this,
a winner.
yeah, take this magic pill and all your problems will be
Wouldn't we
solved.
all? I think that's
That'd be
probably
fun.
Ozempic, you know, I've heard really good things. Take this magic pill. I
I
don't
saw
actually think it's an injection.
you see Rebel Wilson said that she's dabbled with Ozempic.
I'm not surprised. I mean, this is for another time, and I know it's going to be really divisive, but this could be an entire. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. I am not against it. I mean, just let's just be really divisive at the end because no one's watching now. It's no one's still watching. I think that so many people are given such a hard time about what they look like, and oh, you're being this and you're being so unhealthy and da da da. And so now they've taken a drug that helps them lose weight, and they're like, well, you can't do that.
Mm.
That's terrible. I don't believe in the shortage situation because that is a man-made problem. If they want to make more of the drug, they'll make more of the drug. If you've got money, you can buy the drug. That's the situation. So if there's a shortage, it's because you're not paying for it privately. People who are buying Ozempic are paying for it privately. That's the whole situation with that. There's not a real shortage. It's an imaginary shortage because they're actually just selling it privately, which is a drug company thing, not a person buying Ozempic thing. I do not have a problem with it. I think that it is so hypocritical that the people who would be like, this person's obese and yada yada, terrible example, and now giving the same shit to the people who've lost weight because they're taking a drug that is designed to help them lose weight.
Mm. This conversation could go off in so many
This
different
is
branches.
this
So
is a
let's save it.
whole. This is a
Save
different
it for the
episode.
podcast. Save it for the
It's
podcast.
a different episode when we're feeling spicy and we want an argument.
Like not us. Just to clarify.
We want an argument. No, when we
argument.
feel like arguing with people, that's when we'll talk about Ozempic.
Come back to me when my hormones are raging.
Wait till when you get your next hot flash, you'll be like, put the camera on, put the camera on. Let's do it now.
I'm really, really angry right now.
Let's do it now. Right, let's wrap this up. Thank you so much for watching another episode.
Thank you.
I think it's gonna be great. I think it's gonna be really good. We've only had a few people watch the first one so far at the time of airing, but it's been favourable, and you guys said you want more, so here it is. Every Wednesday.
We want more. We want more. We want more. Yay.
And here we are. Yeah.
Right, I'm gonna go now. My tea's gone, and I need to go and have some dinner.
Okay,
So,
right.
arrivederci, everybody. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye-bye.
I don't know why I said it like that. Anyway, bye.